The diplomatic vessel glided through the void of space, its hull reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. Captain Tae-sung stood on the bridge, watching as the alien world grew larger in the viewport. He had seen many planets during his 20 years in the Terran Space Navy, but this one was different. This was humanity's first official contact with the Valthani Empire, and everything had to go perfectly. The planet below looked like a giant pearl, covered in cities that sparkled like crystals in the sunlight. Ambassador Dong-ha stood beside Tae-sung, adjusting his formal uniform for the 10th time in as many minutes. The older man was nervous, and he had every right to be. This meeting could determine humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Lieutenant Hana approached them with a data pad. She was young for her rank, barely 30, but her expertise in alien biology had made her invaluable. "Sir, the Valthani are expecting us at the palace in 2 hours. I've updated the cultural briefing. Remember, they value hierarchy above all else. Never interrupt a royal. Never touch them without permission. And whatever you do, never laugh in their presence." Tae-sung nodded absently. He had read the briefing a dozen times already. The Valthani were insectoid creatures, their bodies covered in hard shells that glowed with natural light. They had built an empire spanning 40 star systems, and their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's best efforts. Making them allies would change everything for Earth. The landing was smooth. Their shuttle descended through clouds that smelled faintly of flowers, touching down on a platform made of something that looked like glass but felt warm under their feet. A delegation of Valthani waited for them, their bodies catching the light in ways that made them seem to shimmer and shift. Tae-sung had seen the images in the briefings, but seeing them in person was different. They stood on 6 legs, their upper bodies rising like towers. Their heads were angular, with large compound eyes that reflected rainbow colors. Delicate antennae moved constantly, tasting the air. Ambassador Dong-ha led them forward. The translation devices they wore would convert the clicking and whistling sounds of Valthani speech into words they could understand. The welcoming ceremony was formal and long. There were speeches about friendship and cooperation, about the future and the past. Tae-sung stood at attention, his face neutral, his mind wandering. Then they were escorted to the palace itself. The building defied description. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, all curves and spirals reaching toward the sky. Inside, the walls glowed with soft light, and the air hummed with a sound just below the range of human hearing. Hundreds of Valthani filled the great hall, their bodies creating a sea of moving colors. The emperor entered, and everyone bowed. He was larger than the others, his shell decorated with patterns that spoke of age and authority. He spoke briefly, his voice translated as formal and distant. Then he gestured, and the crowd parted. 3 younger Valthani approached. These were the royal children, Tae-sung realized. The briefing had mentioned them. Prince Kael, the eldest, moved with military precision. His shell bore scars from combat, marks of honor in Valthani culture. The middle child kept their head down, seeming uninterested in the proceedings. And then there was Princess Mirai. She was smaller than her brothers, her shell a pale blue that darkened to purple at the edges. The bioluminescent patterns on her carapace moved like waves, creating displays that the briefing had said indicated emotion. She moved gracefully, her 6 legs carrying her with a dancer's control. When she stopped in front of the human delegation, her antennae pointed directly at Tae-sung. Ambassador Dong-ha was speaking with Prince Kael, discussing military matters in careful diplomatic language. Lieutenant Hana was answering questions from a group of Valthani scientists. That left Tae-sung standing somewhat apart from the others, trying to look dignified while feeling distinctly out of place. Princess Mirai approached him. Her compound eyes caught the light, making it impossible to read her expression. The translation device crackled to life as she spoke. Her voice was surprisingly soft, almost hesitant. "Captain Tae-sung," she said, "I have a question for you." He bowed slightly the way the briefing had instructed. "Your Highness, I am honored." She shifted her weight, her legs moving in a pattern that might have indicated nervousness in a human. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered faster. "The other species we have met," she began, then paused. "They found us difficult to look at. They were polite, but we could sense their discomfort. I wish to know the truth from your kind." Tae-sung waited, wondering where this was going. Around them, other conversations continued. a background hum of diplomatic noise. The princess's antennae drooped slightly. "Do you think I'm ugly?" The question was so unexpected, so painfully honest and vulnerable, that Tae-sung's carefully maintained diplomatic expression cracked. He laughed. Not a cruel laugh or a mocking one, but the kind of laugh that escapes when something catches you completely off guard. It was brief, just a few seconds, but in the sudden silence that followed, it might as well have been a thunderclap. The great hall went quiet. Every Valthani turned to look at them. Ambassador Dongha's face went pale. Lieutenant Hana's eyes widened in horror. Even the emperor, distant on his throne, shifted his attention to the human captain who had just committed what was apparently a terrible breach of protocol. Tae-sung realized his mistake immediately, but the damage was done. He cleared his throat, trying to salvage the situation. "Your Highness, I apologize. I didn't mean any disrespect. It's just where I come from. That's such a universal question. Beauty isn't about looking like us. You're fascinating. Your patterns are amazing. The way you move is graceful. By any objective measure, you're not ugly at all." But the princess had already stepped back, her patterns flashing red, an obvious sign of distress or anger. Prince Kale moved forward, his larger body placing itself between Tae-sung and his sister. Other Valthani guards began to approach, their movements suggesting they were ready to act if ordered. Ambassador Dongha rushed over, his voice tight with panic. "Captain, what have you done?" Before Tae-sung could respond, the emperor stood. The movement silenced everyone. He spoke, his voice booming through the translation devices. "The human will be confined to quarters while we deliberate his fate. Laughing at royalty is a grave insult to our people. This diplomatic mission is suspended until we decide how to proceed." Guards surrounded Tae-sung. They didn't touch him, but their intent was clear. He was led away from the hall, away from his shocked colleagues through the glowing corridors of the palace. Behind him, he could hear Ambassador Dongha trying desperately to explain, to apologize, to somehow undo what had just happened. Tae-sung was taken to a room that was probably meant to be luxurious, but felt like a prison. The door sealed behind him with a soft sound. He sat on something that might have been a chair and put his head in his hands. He had laughed. He had broken the most important rule of the mission, and in doing so, he might have destroyed humanity's best chance at joining the galactic community. All because an alien princess had asked a question that reminded him so much of human insecurity that he couldn't help but react like a human would. Outside his window, the alien city glowed in the gathering darkness. Somewhere in this palace, diplomats and generals were deciding his fate, and possibly the fate of everyone on Earth, all because of one honest question and one genuine laugh. 3 days passed in the luxurious prison that was Tae-sung's quarters. The room had everything he could need except freedom. Food arrived through a slot in the wall. Strange dishes that the translation panel assured him were safe for humans. The view from his window showed the sprawling city, but he could not leave to see it up close. On the morning of the 4th day, Lieutenant Hana was allowed to visit. 2 guards escorted her into the room and stood by the door, watching. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she had not slept much. "How bad is it?" Tae-sung asked. Hana sat down on one of the alien chairs. "Half the Valthani court wants you executed. They say laughing at a princess is the same as laughing at the entire royal family. The other half wants you expelled from the planet and all diplomatic relations severed." She paused. Ambassador Dongha has been meeting with their officials non-stop, trying to explain human behavior. It's not going well. Tae-sung had expected as much. "And the princess?" "She hasn't been seen since the incident. Rumor is she's been confined to her own quarters. Some of the courtiers blame her for asking the question in the first place." Hana leaned forward. "Sir, help me understand. Why did you laugh? You knew it was forbidden." It was hard to explain. The question caught me off guard. Here's this alien princess, member of a species that has technology we can only dream about, asking if she's ugly. It reminded me of every insecure person I've ever met. My sister used to ask that question before important events. My colleagues ask it before promotion reviews. It's so human, and apparently it's also Valthani. That connection, that shared vulnerability across species, it just struck me as both sad and wonderful at the same time. Hana nodded slowly. "That's what I've been trying to explain to them. Humans laugh for many reasons. It's not always mockery. Sometimes it's recognition. Sometimes it's joy at finding common ground. She pulled out her datapad. I've been showing them archives of human culture. Comedy shows, funny videos, people laughing at weddings and reunions. I think some of them are starting to understand, but their culture is so rigid. They don't have anything like humor in the way we understand it. The guards shifted uncomfortably, a sign they were listening even if they pretended not to. Tae-sung wondered how much of this conversation was being reported back to the court. That evening, something unexpected happened. Tae-sung was reading through the cultural database Hana had left him when the room's lighting changed. The soft glow dimmed and a section of the wall became transparent. On the other side stood Princess Mirai. She was alone, without guards or attendants. Her bioluminescent patterns were moving slowly, colors shifting from blue to green and back again. The translation device activated. Captain Tae-sung, she said, I have bribed the palace systems engineer to give me 10 minutes. We need to talk. He approached the transparent wall. Up close, he could see the intricate details of her shell, the way light played across its surface. Your Highness, I'm sorry for what happened. I never meant to insult you. I know, she replied. I have been watching the archives your Lieutenant Hana provided. Human laughter is complex, but that is not why I came. Her antennae drooped. I asked you that question because I needed to know. The Krell came to our world 5 years ago. Their diplomats could not hide their disgust at our appearance. They called us insects, vermin in fancy shells. The Torvin were more polite, but we saw the way they avoided looking at us directly. When humanity arrived, I thought perhaps a younger species might see us differently. Tae-sung understood now. So you asked me directly, hoping for an honest answer? Yes. And when you laughed, I thought you were mocking me like the others did in private. But your words afterward and the expression on your face, it was not mockery. It was surprise. Maybe even kindness. She moved closer to the wall. No one in the court has ever treated me as just another person before. Everyone sees the princess first. But you saw someone asking a question, and you responded honestly. In human culture, Tae-sung explained, that question usually means the person is feeling vulnerable. They want reassurance, but they also want honesty. When someone asks if they're ugly, they're really asking if they're worthy of being seen. And you are. Your species is incredible. The way you've built this civilization, the art in your architecture, even the way you move, it's all beautiful in its own way. Princess Mirai's patterns flashed bright yellow, which the cultural database had said indicated pleasure or happiness. I wish I could show this to the court, but my brother Kale says humanity is weak. He says you have no natural armor, no great strength, no advanced technology. He argues that allying with you would make us look desperate. We are weak in some ways, Tae-sung admitted, but we're strong in others. We adapt, we endure. We keep going when any reasonable species would give up. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant alarm. The princess's patterns flashed red. I must go. They've discovered I'm here. She paused at the door. Captain, whatever happens in the next few days, know that some of us understand what you meant. Some of us are grateful for your honesty. Then she was gone and the wall became solid again. 2 more days passed. Tae-sung was beginning to think he would spend the rest of his life in this beautiful prison when Ambassador Dong-ha was allowed to visit. The older man looked 20 years older than when they had arrived. There's news, Dong-ha said without preamble. The Krell Dominion has moved warships to the border of Valthani space. 3 colonies are on high alert. The Emperor is more concerned about military threats than diplomatic incidents right now. So what does that mean for us? It means your fate is postponed. But there's more. Prince Kale has proposed something unexpected. He wants to see what humanity is capable of in combat. He suggested a joint military exercise between our forces and theirs. If we prove ourselves valuable as military allies, the Emperor might overlook what happened with the princess. Tae-sung stood up, feeling energy return to his body after days of inactivity. That's good news. When do we start? Tomorrow. But Tae-sung understand what's really happening here. The Valthani are scared. The Krell Dominion has been absorbing smaller civilizations for decades. The Valthani are next on the list. They need allies, but they won't ally with a species they see as weak. We have one chance to show them what humans can do. That night, Tae-sung couldn't sleep. He stood at the window watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, the Krell were preparing for war. And humanity, barely a century into space travel, was about to enter the galactic stage not through diplomacy or trade, but through combat. He thought about Princess Mirai's question again. Do you think I'm ugly? It wasn't really about appearance. It was about worth, about value, about whether you mattered to someone else. And now humanity faced the same question from the galaxy. Were they worth noticing? Were they worth respecting? Tomorrow they would start finding out, not through words but through actions, not through appearance but through ability. The diplomatic mission had failed, but maybe, just maybe, there was another way to prove humanity's place among the stars. Outside his window, the first moon was rising, casting silver light across the alien city. In orbit above, human warships were preparing for the exercise that would determine everything. Taesung pressed his hand against the window, feeling its warmth. "We're not weak," he whispered to the night. "We're just different, and different can be strong." The city lights flickered like stars, and somewhere in the palace an alien princess was probably wondering if she had made the right choice in seeking the truth. Taesung hoped he would get the chance to tell her that she had. That honesty, even when it led to mistakes, was always better than comfortable lies. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but tonight, for the first time since arriving, Taesung felt hope. The training facility was built into the side of a mountain, vast enough to hold both human and Valthani forces. Taesung arrived with his security detail to find Prince Kale waiting. The Valthani prince was even more impressive in military armor, his shell reinforced with metal plating that caught the morning light. "Captain," Kale said through the translator, "your people are small, fragile. I have agreed to this exercise only because my father commands it. Prove to me that humanity deserves to stand beside the Valthani Empire." Taesung met the alien's compound eyes without flinching. "We will show you what we can do, but understanding may take longer." The human contingent consisted of 200 Marines from the horizon's edge. They looked tiny compared to the Valthani warriors, who towered over them on 6 powerful legs. The Valthani were natural hunters, their bodies designed for combat. They had sharp mandibles, armored shells, and strength that could crush metal. The humans had none of these advantages. Lieutenant Hana stood beside Taesung, her scientific curiosity clearly battling with her concern. "Sir, the physical differences are significant. In a straight fight, we can't match their strength or durability." "Then we don't fight straight," Taesung replied. "We fight smart." The first exercise was simple, hand-to-hand combat in pairs. A human marine named Jiwoo volunteered to face a Valthani warrior named Thex. Jiwoo was young, barely 23, with quick eyes and quicker movements. Thex was twice her size and covered in natural armor. The match began. Thex charged forward with the confidence of someone who had never lost such a contest. Jiwoo didn't try to meet the charge head-on. Instead, she dropped and rolled, using Thex's momentum against him. She came up behind the surprised warrior and delivered a strike to the joint where his middle legs connected to his body. It wasn't enough to hurt him, but it made him stumble. The match continued for 5 minutes. Jiwoo couldn't hurt Thex significantly, but she also never let him land a solid hit. She was always moving, always adapting, finding weak points that the armored warrior didn't even know he had. When time was called, both were still standing, but Thex's pattern showed orange frustration while Jiwoo was grinning. Prince Kale's mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise. Interesting. The human uses tactics instead of strength, but in real combat, tactics only delay the inevitable. Do they? Taesung asked. Let's continue and see. The next exercise was tactical. 2 squads entering a building to secure objectives. The Valthani squad moved like a military textbook, using their natural advantages to create an impenetrable line. The human squad did something unexpected. They split up, using multiple entry points, coordinating through comm devices while moving independently. When the 2 squads met at the objective, the humans had already secured it using a route the Valthani hadn't even considered. Ambassador Dong Ha watched from the observation deck with several Valthani officials. "The prince seems troubled," he noted quietly to Hana. "He should be," Hana replied. "He's realizing that different doesn't mean weak. It just means different." Over the following days, the exercises continued. Each one revealed something new about humanity. In endurance tests, the humans outlasted Valthani warriors who had superior strength but tired quickly. In problem-solving scenarios, human teams found creative solutions that the more rigid Valthani military structure wouldn't allow. And in psychological resilience tests, humans showed a stubborn refusal to quit that bordered on irrational. During this time, something unexpected began to happen. Jiwoo and Thek started training together voluntarily. The young Marine would teach the Valthini warrior about human tactics, and he would teach her about Valthini combat forms. Other pairs began to form. Bridges of understanding built through shared struggle and mutual respect. Princess Mirai appeared at the facility on the 5th day. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she had come anyway. Taesung saw her watching from a balcony as human and Valthini soldiers worked together on a combat simulation. Her patterns were bright blue, the color of fascination. That evening, she found him in the planning room where he was reviewing the next day's exercises. Her guards waited outside, giving them a moment of privacy. "Your people are remarkable," she said. "Kale won't admit it, but I can see he's impressed. He's been studying your tactics all night." "We're just doing what we do best," Taesung replied. "Adapting, surviving, making the best of what we have." She moved closer, her antennae gesturing toward a display showing human history. "I have been learning about your world. It seems like such a dangerous place. High gravity, extreme weather, predators everywhere. How did you survive?" "By being tougher than we had any right to be. By refusing to give up, by hunting predators until we became the apex species." He brought up an image of Earth. "Our world made us what we are. It wasn't kind or easy, but it made us strong in ways that matter when everything goes wrong." "The Valthini world was gentler," Mirai admitted. "We evolved in peace and safety. We became civilized early, but now I wonder if that made us soft. When the Krell threatened us, we didn't know how to respond with the same aggression. We're scientists and builders, not warriors." "You don't need to be warriors," Taesung said. "You just need to be willing to work with people who think differently than you do. Your technology combined with human tactics could be formidable." Her pattern shifted to yellow. "Is that what you're proposing? A real alliance?" Before Taesung could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed and the translation system crackled with urgent messages. Prince Kale's voice boomed through the speakers. "All personnel to combat stations. This is not a drill. Krell forces have attacked the colony on Valthini 7. Multiple ships destroyed. Ground forces landing. We're scrambling everything we have." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Soldiers, both human and Valthini, rushed to their positions. Taesung looked at Princess Mirai. "This is it. The real test." She straightened, her royal bearing returning. "I'm going with the response fleet. I command a cruiser in the defense force. Your Highness, is that safe?" Her mandibles clicked in what Taesung had learned was the Valthani equivalent of a grim smile. "Safety is no longer a concern. My people are dying. I will not hide in the palace while they fight." Within an hour, ships were launching from the orbital platforms. Human vessels, smaller and faster than their Valthini counterparts, formed up alongside the alien cruisers. On the ground, Marines boarded transports, checking weapons and equipment with the practiced efficiency of soldiers who knew combat was coming. Jiwoo stood beside Thex in the transport bay. They were on the same squad now, human and Valthini working together. "Ready for this?" she asked. The Valthini warriors' patterns flashed red with determination. "Ready. We fight together now." Taesung boarded the human command ship, the Defiant, along with Ambassador Dongha and Lieutenant Hana. The ambassador looked pale but determined. "This isn't what I hoped for when we came here." "No," Taesung agreed. "But it might be what we needed. Wars forge alliances faster than 1,000 diplomatic dinners." The fleet entered hyperspace, racing toward Valthini 7. In the command center, holographic displays showed the tactical situation. It looked bad. The Krell had brought overwhelming force, 20 warships against the colony's small defense fleet. They were here to conquer, not just raid. Prince Kale's face appeared on the communication screen. "Captain Taesung, my sister has insisted that you coordinate tactics for the combined fleet. I have agreed against my better judgment. Do not make me regret this decision." Taesung studied the tactical display. The Krell ships were massive and heavily armed, but they moved in predictable formations. They expected the Valthini to meet them head-on, to fight with honor and tradition. They weren't expecting humans. "Here's what we're going to do," Taesung began, his voice carrying to both human and Valthini commanders. "We're not going to fight the way they expect. We're going to show the Krell what happens when you threaten a human ally." As he outlined the plan, he could see Prince Kale's patterns shifting from red to orange to yellow. Confusion, then understanding, then something that might have been approval. It was an insane plan by Valthini military standards. But by human standards, it was just creative problem-solving with really big guns. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valthini 7 system. Ahead, the colony was burning. The Krell were beginning their ground assault, and between them and salvation was a combined force that was about to teach the galaxy a very important lesson. Never underestimate the humans. The Krell warships hung in space like massive predators, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. They were 3 times the size of the largest Valthini cruiser and 5 times the size of any human ship. The Krell expected an easy victory. They had conquered a dozen worlds using the same strategy, overwhelming force and brutal efficiency. Tae-sung watched the tactical display from the bridge of the Defiant. All ships maintain formation. Wait for my signal. The Krell Admiral's face appeared on the communication screen. He was a massive reptilian creature with scales that looked like armor plating and eyes that gleamed with cold intelligence. When he spoke, his voice was a deep rumble that the translator rendered as contemptuous. Valthini cowards, you bring humans to fight your battles. We will crush them along with you. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Prince Kale responded from his flagship. The Krell Dominion has violated Valthini space. This is an act of war. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The Krell Admiral laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Consequences? You cannot even defend one colony. What consequences could you possibly threaten? Tae-sung cut into the channel. How about we show you? The Krell Admiral focused on the small human ship. And what are you, little creature? Another species the Valthini have dragged into their weakness? We're humans, Tae-sung said calmly. And we're about to teach you something about underestimating people. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. Execute Pattern Delta. All human ships engage evasive protocols. Valthini fleet. Maintain defensive positions and provide covering fire. Let's dance. The human ships broke formation in a way that looked chaotic but was precisely coordinated. They scattered in multiple directions, each vessel moving at maximum speed. The Krell ships fired, massive energy beams cutting through space, but the human ships were already somewhere else. They were small enough and fast enough to dodge attacks that would have obliterated the larger Valthini cruisers. They're like insects, the Krell weapons officer said, not knowing his comment was being intercepted. How do we hit them? The human ships regrouped into 3 attack formations, each targeting a different Krell vessel. They didn't go for the heavily armored prows or the shielded engines. Instead, they targeted sensor arrays, communication dishes, and weapon cooling systems. Places that were technically unimportant until they weren't. The first Krell ship lost its long-range sensors. The second found its communication system jammed. The third discovered that its main weapons were overheating because the cooling system had been damaged. The Krell formation began to falter as ships lost coordination with each other. Now, Tae-sung commanded, Valthini fleet, full assault on marked targets. The Valthini cruisers, which had been holding position, suddenly surged forward. Their weapons, more powerful than anything humanity had, tore into the confused Krell ships. Princess Mirai's cruiser led the charge, her vessel's distinctive blue glow marking her position at the front of the formation. The space battle became chaos. The Krell were stronger and better armed, but they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of conventional warfare. Every time they tried to line up a shot on the human ships, the humans were already moving to a new position. Every time they tried to coordinate their fire, their communication systems failed or their sensors gave them bad information. In the command center, Lieutenant Hana monitored the battle with worried eyes. Sir, Princess Mirai's ship is taking heavy fire. Her shields are down to 30%. Tae-sung saw it on the display. A Krell battleship had managed to isolate her cruiser from the main fleet. The princess's ship was powerful, but it couldn't stand alone against such overwhelming force. All human units converge on the princess's position. Get those Krell off her. 6 human fighters broke from their attack patterns and swarmed the Krell battleship like angry hornets. They were too small for the battleship's main guns to track effectively. Its point defense systems tried to target them, but the human pilots were too skilled, too fast, too unpredictable. They hammered at the battleship's shields, looking for weak points, buying time for the princess to retreat. But Princess Mirai didn't retreat. Instead, her ship turned and joined the assault on the battleship. Her weapons, combined with the human fighters, began to crack the Krell shields. The battleship tried to pull back, but it was too late. A human missile found a gap in the shields and struck the ship's main reactor. The massive vessel shuddered, then broke apart in a flash of light. The battle turned after that. The Krell, seeing one of their largest ships destroyed by a combined force of humans and Valtheni, began to reconsider their assumptions. They were still winning in terms of raw firepower, but the cost was much higher than they had anticipated. Then the situation changed again. 3 more Krell ships dropped out of hyperspace, reinforcements rushing to join the fight. Tae-sung cursed under his breath. The odds, already bad, had just gotten worse. "We need to get our people on the ground," Prince Kale's voice came through the communication system. "The colony is still under attack. We can't save them if we're all fighting up here." Tae-sung made a decision that would haunt him for years. All human transports begin landing operations. "Valtheni fleet, cover them. We're going to have to trust that our people on the ground can make a difference." The transports carrying Marines, both human and Valtheni, broke from the main fleet and dove toward the planet below. The Krell tried to stop them, but the human fighters ran interference, sacrificing their own safety to protect the vulnerable transports. Jiwoo sat in her transport next to Thex, checking her rifle for the 3rd time. Around them, other soldiers did the same, human and Valtheni alike. They could feel the ship shaking as it entered the atmosphere, could hear the explosions as Krell weapons tried to shoot them down. "If we die," Thex said quietly, his patterns showing blue resolve, "we die fighting side by side." "We're not going to die," Jiwoo replied with more confidence than she felt. "We're going to win. That's what humans do. We win even when we shouldn't." The transport slammed into the ground in the colony's main square. The doors blew open and soldiers poured out into chaos. The colony was on fire. Krell ground troops, massive reptilian warriors in powered armor, were advancing through the streets. Valtheni colonists were fleeing or fighting with whatever weapons they could find. Jiwoo's squad took cover behind a destroyed building. She could see Krell soldiers ahead, their weapons powerful enough to punch through walls. "Thex, can your people flank from the left?" "Yes, we are stronger but slower. Your people should provide covering fire." "Got it. On my mark." Jiwoo waited, counting heartbeats, then signaled. The human Marines opened fire, their bullets forcing the Krell to take cover. In that moment, Thex and his squad charged from the flank, their natural armor allowing them to absorb hits that would have killed a human. The Krell, caught between 2 forces, began to fall back, but there were so many of them. For every Krell that fell, 2 more appeared. Jiwoo watched as one of her fellow Marines took a hit, his body thrown back by the force of a Krell weapon. She felt rage building inside her, the kind of fury that made humans dangerous. She grabbed a damaged Krell weapon from a fallen enemy and figured out how to fire it. The weapon was meant for someone twice her size, but she braced it against a wall and started firing. The powerful energy bolts tore through Krell armor, and suddenly the enemy soldiers were the ones diving for cover. Above them, the space battle continued. Princess Mireille's ship was barely holding together, its shields gone and hull breached in multiple places. But she refused to retreat, using her damaged vessel to protect the smaller human ships whenever she could. Tae-sung saw what she was doing. "Your Highness, your ship is crippled. You need to withdraw." "Not while my people are dying below," her voice came back, strained but determined. Then disaster struck. A Krell battleship broke through the human fighter screen and fired directly at Princess Mireille's cruiser. The shot was perfect, hitting the ship's bridge section. Explosions rippled through the vessel as systems failed. The cruiser began to tumble, its engines dead, falling toward the planet. "Mireille," Prince Kale's voice was raw with emotion. "Sister, respond." There was no response. The princess's ship was falling, burning as it entered the atmosphere. Tae-sung watched the trajectory and realized where it would crash. Right in the middle of the colony, in an area controlled by Krell forces. He didn't think. He didn't calculate odds or consider alternatives. He just acted. "Get me a shuttle, now!" "Sir, that's suicide," Lieutenant Hana protested. "She didn't abandon us in space." "I won't abandon her on the ground." Tae-sung was already moving toward the shuttle bay. "You have command. Keep those Krell busy." As his shuttle dropped toward the planet, toward the burning wreck of the princess's ship surrounded by enemy forces, Tae-sung wondered if he was about to prove that humans really were as crazy as the galaxy suspected. The shuttle dropped through smoke and fire, its hull rattling as Tae-sung pushed the engines beyond safe limits. Below, he could see the wreckage of Princess Mirai's cruiser scattered across 3 city blocks. Krell soldiers were already converging on the crash site, their heavy armor making them look like walking tanks. Tae-sung set the shuttle down behind a collapsed building, as close to the cruiser's bridge section as he dared. He grabbed a rifle and opened the door, immediately coming under fire. Energy bolts scorched the air around him as he ran toward the wreckage. A squad of human marines appeared from nowhere, laying down covering fire. Jiwoo was with them, her armor scorched and her face covered in soot. "Sir, what are you doing here?" "Saving a princess. Help me get into that ship." They fought their way forward meter by bloody meter. Thex and his Valthini soldiers joined them, their natural armor taking hits that would have killed humans. Together they created a corridor through the Krell forces, reaching the twisted metal of the cruiser's bridge. Inside, emergency lights flickered. Bodies of Valthini crew members lay where they had fallen. Tae-sung pushed through the debris, calling out, "Princess Mirai! Can you hear me?" A weak sound came from behind a collapsed bulkhead. Tae-sung and Thex worked together to move the debris, their different strengths complementing each other. There, trapped but alive, was Princess Mirai. Her shell was cracked, leaking the blue fluid that served as Valthini blood. Her patterns flickered weakly. "Captain," she whispered through the translator, "you should not have come. Too dangerous." "Probably," Tae-sung agreed, carefully extracting her from the wreckage. "But humans have this terrible habit of doing stupid things for people we care about." "Can you walk?" "I think so." With support, she managed to stand on 4 of her 6 legs. The other 2 were damaged, but she was alive. Getting out was harder than getting in. The Krell had surrounded the position, bringing up heavy weapons. Jiwoo's squad was running low on ammunition. Thex had taken multiple hits, his armor cracked and leaking. They were trapped, and everyone knew it. Then Prince Kale's voice boomed over their communication devices. "Hold position. Help is coming." From the sky, the remaining Valthini fleet descended, ignoring the Krell ships to focus on the ground battle. They rained fire on the Krell positions, creating a path. At the same time, every human and Valthini soldier in the colony began pushing toward the crash site. A coordinated assault that caught the Krell between multiple forces. Tae-sung and his group fought their way back to the shuttle. Princess Mirai stumbled and he caught her, supporting her weight. "Almost there? Stay with me. Why?" she asked, her voice fading. "Why risk everything for me?" "Because you asked an honest question," he replied. "And because honest people are rare enough in the galaxy that they're worth saving." They reached the shuttle. Jiwoo and the other Marines formed a defensive perimeter, while Tae-sung got the princess inside. Thex was the last to board, his body riddled with wounds but still fighting. As the shuttle lifted off, a Krell rocket struck it. The ship spun, systems failing, falling back toward the ground. Tae-sung fought the controls, somehow managing to turn the fall into a rough landing instead of a crash. They were down again, damaged but alive. The Krell were closing in. This time there was nowhere to run, but then something changed in the battle. The Krell, who had been winning through sheer numbers and firepower, suddenly began to retreat. Their ships pulled back, their ground forces withdrew. In minutes they were gone, jumping to hyperspace and leaving the system. Tae-sung stared at the tactical display in confusion. What just happened? Lieutenant Hana's voice came through the communication system. "Sir, we've been monitoring Krell communications. They're calling us the humans who don't die. One of their commanders said that any species crazy enough to fly into fire to save one individual is too dangerous to fight. They're retreating to reassess." From his flagship, Prince Kale confirmed it. "The Krell have withdrawn. They've transmitted a message saying they will negotiate rather than continue the assault. They've never done that before. In all their conquests, they've never retreated from a battle they were winning." Inside the damaged shuttle, Princess Mirai looked at Tae-sung with her compound eyes. "You saved me. You saved my people. Why?" "Because that's what allies do," Tae-sung replied simply. "And because I meant what I said before. You're not ugly. You're worth saving. Your entire species is worth fighting for." Her patterns flashed colors he had never seen before, a complex display that the translator struggled to interpret. It settled on the word gratitude, but Tae-sung suspected it meant much more than that. The following weeks were a blur. The colony was rebuilt with both human and Valthini working side by side. Jiwoo recovered from her wounds and received a Valthini Medal of Honor, the first human ever to be so recognized. Thex was promoted to commander with Jiwoo as his second. They became symbols of the alliance. The formal alliance treaty was signed in the same palace where Taesung had first laughed. The emperor himself presided, his patterns showing colors that indicated approval. Ambassador Dongha managed the diplomatic details, finally able to do the job he had come to do. Princess Mirai, her shell healing but still scarred, stood beside her father. She had been changed by the battle, made stronger by survival. When she spoke to the assembled court, her voice carried authority it hadn't had before. "We judged humanity by their appearance," she said. "We saw their soft skin and small size and thought them weak. But we learned that strength comes in many forms. They taught us that courage isn't about having no fear. It's about being afraid and doing what must be done anyway. They taught us that laughter isn't always mockery. Sometimes it's recognition of shared experience, and they taught us that true allies don't abandon you when things get hard." After the ceremony, Taesung found himself alone with the princess on a balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that reminded him of her bioluminescent patterns. "I never properly thanked you," she said quietly, "for answering my question honestly, for coming to save me, for showing us what humanity truly is. You don't need to thank me. You gave us something too." He looked out at the city where human and Valthani now walked together. "You gave us a place in the galaxy. You saw past our differences to what we could be together." She moved closer. "My brother Kale says humanity is the most dangerous species he's ever encountered. Not because of your weapons or your technology, but because of your absolute refusal to give up. He says you're either the best allies or the worst enemies anyone could have. I hope we always remain allies. We will. I'll make sure of it." Her pattern shifted to a soft blue. "And Captain, I have another question for you." Taesung smiled, remembering where this had all started. "Ask, do you think scars are ugly?" He looked at the crack in her shell, the mark left by the battle. "I think scars are proof that you survived something that could have killed you. By human standards, that makes them beautiful. They tell a story of strength." This time, when he smiled, she understood it wasn't mockery. And when she made the chittering sound that was Valthini laughter, he understood it was joy. Months later, back on Earth, Taesung stood in the headquarters of the Terran Space Council, accepting a medal for his role in securing humanity's first major alliance. The ceremony was formal and dignified, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about an alien princess who had asked a simple question and inadvertently changed the course of human history. Lieutenant Hana found him afterward. "Sir, we've received a message from Princess Mirai. She's been appointed as the Valthani ambassador to Earth. She'll be arriving next month." "That's good news. She'll do well here. There's more. The Krell have requested negotiations. They want to understand the species that made them retreat, and 3 other civilizations have reached out wanting to know more about humanity." Hana grinned. "Apparently word has spread that we're either crazy or brilliant or both." "Maybe we're just human," Taesung replied. "And maybe that's enough." He looked out the window at Earth, beautiful and blue in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, among the stars, an alien princess was learning that appearances meant nothing compared to character, and humanity was learning that they had a place in the galaxy not because they were like everyone else, but because they were uniquely themselves. The question, "Do you think I'm ugly?" had been answered in the most human way possible. Not with words alone, but with actions. With sacrifice and courage and the stubborn refusal to abandon someone who needed help. And the laughter that had started it all. That had become something else. A bridge between species. A reminder that beneath all the differences there were universal truths. Everyone wanted to be seen. Everyone wanted to matter. Everyone wanted to know they were worth something to someone else. Taesung smiled and turned away from the window. There was work to do. New worlds to visit. New species to meet. New alliances to forge. And somewhere in the Valthani Empire, a princess was probably asking her advisors questions they weren't prepared for, making them see the galaxy in new ways, just like she had done for him, all because she'd had the courage to ask an honest question, and he'd had the honesty to answer with a laugh. The galaxy would never be quite the same.